Panic of.
Sorry, here she is. Yay! Woo! Here she is. Look at her with her pompadour and her.
Wow.
Wow. Nice feather. Nice.
Hi there.
Hi.
I was trying to, Zoom has this new thing that you have to enter when you're the host, you have to enter another, what is that?
Code.
Code. Anyway, I always do that wrong. So then I play the audio. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like, did we just lose somebody?
No, I have to go put some chapstick on.
Lori is our guest today, and this is her book right here. I have.
Oh, fantastic!
And Lori is just a beloved whole being faculty, so we are so happy. She's out somewhere in the Midwest teaching mindful-based stress. She was asked to create a program out there.
Oh my gosh.
She was with Tal's class, from the beginning, and then she was a senior PA and faculty. So she's, it's just a joy to.
So we are so lucky today. And I'm making you both co-hosts.
Are you cold? Is it cold out there?
Yeah, well, I just turned the heat on. It's about 63 in my house, so.
So Lori, Caroline Lori. Caroline is the director of the JCC Fitness and a beloved colleague and friend. She's in SIP right now, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm in the background on chat, and I have to drop off right before 1 because I go back to back today in sessions, but I will follow up with you, Lori.
Great.
So you just kind of take it away and put myself on mute, and I love you very much, and you go, girl.
Love you too.
So it sounds like we're doing everything today from the description.
So Caroline, I watched a couple of years. Michael Camber was one of my students in SIP, and I snagged his, and I watched Laurel, who is a colleague of mine.
Yeah.
And I haven't working full time, it's just hard to make the time to get at them all. But I wanted to run by what I was thinking with you and see if, because I will be sharing the book, and I will be sharing it so that people can see, the different pages, and they can see, it's just sharing like that. I have a little, I would love to have discussions about it. I don't think of myself as like a lecturer. So I wanted to see if that works with how you've done this in the past, or does everybody just do however they want to do it?
Well, we can do it many different ways. Everyone is a little bit different. Mm-hmm. Sometimes what we do is I usually just say hello to everybody, and then I read the description. So that gives people a sort of a program, a sense of what we're doing. Yeah. And then they get to know a little bit more about you. I ask you how you were involved in the Whole Being Institute, because this is a program that's been sponsored by the Whole Being Institute. Mm-hmm. And then we talk about the context of what your topic is, kind of very basic, like why that topic, how do we, who are listeners, get more of that, what it is, why it's important, and how we get more of it, mm-hmm. and how it applies to us. Very, very simple. And then we ask questions. We can, I see Phoebe's got your book too. So let me just ask you, and then I get to, what I love about being the co-host is that, or the person that interviews is you is that I don't really know that much. Yeah. I'm like the lay person. So I see my role as, how do I kind of unpack what your knowledge is for everybody and make it applicable to, or applicable. How do you say, what's the best way to say that? Applicable. Yeah. Thank you for helping with that. Yeah. I find that when I'm cold, my articulation is
well, the other thing I'm going to throw out, Caroline, is I have a short, and it's only if you want, when I launched the book a year and a half ago, I put together a little slideshow because my daughter illustrated it, and it's about how long it took me for, you know, coming up with the idea, and how long it took from that to, you know, and how we worked together on coming up with the words, and it came down to what she felt comfortable illustrating, and, you know, I mean, just kind of the process of going through that. And only if you think that would be of interest.
No, I think that would be wonderful. It seems to me like what this, if we go high level for a second, what we're really talking about is authenticity and, you know, creativity, right? Accessing and process, and sort of how to, at this period of time, what the doors are open, right? Like our world is shifting in so many different ways that people are finding themselves open to different projects, open to creating different things, different opportunities, even the way we're doing things. The JCC is opening the gym tomorrow. It's completely different, our processes and what we're doing. And so to me, what you have done is an example of that. It's a collaboration. It's an idea that then became a collaboration, that then there was a relationship in which that happened. And so I think that's a really wonderful metaphor, if that sounds good to you, about where we are right now, which is how do we open, go ahead, Phoebe.
I just wanted to say it because I can't help it, put in my org for Lori, and how, you know, humility is like a top strength. That I think the story within the story is fantastic, because these are applied positive psychology practices. I just sent you, Caroline, the back of her book, where it just kind of describes, it's really about choice. That even right now, you know, people are saying fancy articles. New York Times just had an article about how do we want to be during this time. So it's very central to character strengths, and also choice and self-determination, and how this is within our control. So I can, in the chat box, as you're, you know, presenting some of these characteristics and ways of being and choice, we can type in a question that might have to go with some of these, right? We can have some choices within the webinar. So I really encourage you to kind of frame the context as well as the story. It's so rich. And it also, I think your story, Lori, if I can, reflects a lot of your character strengths, you know, how you stayed with it, and the perseverance, and the, you know, the love. You know, Lori has many children, many incredible, you know, creative children. How many is it now?
Just four.
Yes.
Kids,
how many grandchildren? How
four.
many? And grandchildren?
Four and four.
Grandchildren.
4 and 4. Yep. 4 kids, 4 grandkids.
It's just like her love
Now,
story.
are those kids from each one of your kids, or is there 4?
No, there's two of my kids have kids. Have 2 each.
So her love strength is in everything she does. Plus, right now she's doing a mindful-based production program and all that. So her love of learning, she is got a master's in appreciative inquiry. So Lori is an amazingly, you know, astute teacher and love of learning. So this is a slice, and I think it is central to positive psychology, is who do we want to be in the world? How do we show up? Our locus of control. And now more than ever, this is what people are talking about.
Yeah, you know, what I also think, and I would love to know how you manage like worry. In other words, because what people are also faced with is the reality of, oh my gosh, I realize now, because I've been living X, Y, and Z with a reduced salary, or my job is being terminated, or you know, the fall is coming and it's colder, or, you know, to deal with like the limitation, what I'm going to call the perspective of limitations, which can be real, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We just had, you know, I just did a Shiva last night and this morning for someone who lost their husband suddenly. So it feels to me like what I hear sometimes is, I just want things to go back to normal. Well, this is the new normal, right? And appreciative inquiry about like, okay, what's working, right? What's working? How are we doing? And how that applied to this process too, because I really feel like people are in that place of, should I take the risk and go out and go to the gym? Can I you know, we're still, and people feel very mixed about people going to school now. Kids are going to school, right?
And people in their values and in their strengths, so they have something to reference in terms of how they go about making choices. And so
yes,
your back of the book, Lori says, what choices are you making? So that's really the essence of your book, and it can be applied to not just kids, but everybody.
Yeah.
Show us your slides, Lori.
Yeah,
what's that?
go ahead. You want to show the slides?
Sure, sure. I'll just show you real quick.
While you guys are doing that, I'm going to take you with me. I'll heat up something. Oh, it's so cute. Now, your daughter is,
she's one of the moms.
Illustrator? She's one of the moms? She's amazing.
She's one
illustrator.
of the moms.
Has she illustrated before? Was this her first time? Or?
This was her first book. This was both of our first book. Let me just put this big.
That's amazing.
Will let me. It doesn't look like it will let me. Oh, there we go. Okay, so yeah, she's one of the moms. She's just turned 30. So this was our, well, I mean, I don't want to go through all of them, but just so that you see at a glance, you know, it was a process. It was a process in how we came up with the words, and part of it was what words I insisted on being there and what words she thought she could illustrate. This was the book that I had as a child that I loved and wanted to sort of had in my mind. I had it as one character. And then this was her list when she said, Mom, can we make it instead multicultural? So
I love that.
So it was her idea to make it multicultural, and brilliant. And then just some of Hannah's early artwork. I don't know if you can see it, but
Lori, can I ask you to go back to that list for a minute? Were you influenced by the VIA character strengths in any of this when you're thinking about, you know?
There's 7 character strengths in here for sure.
Exactly. So
yeah. So please. But I actually had the list before I learned about the VIA.
Right. So that's fantastic. So please include that, because the
Yep. And if I forget, Phoebe, just pop in, because I'm open to that.
Yeah. Just for you to know that VIA character strengths have been a through line throughout as a feature of both positive psychology and a lot of presenters, Jane Anderson, Ryan, everybody, Ruth.
Yep. And then just a timeline, just a timeline of how long it took us to get it from a, soup to nuts.
That's amazing.
And then some of the early sketches of the book and the, what the original artwork was to what ended up in the book, and that type of thing. So, and then her son, who's now a big brother. So just a short timeline of what the process was like.
What strikes me is that this is really about perseverance, right? And that, you've got a goal, or you've got a dream, or you've got an idea, and it's just keeping at it.
Yeah.
Too, because it sounds like, and that this idea, I love this idea. I'm not procrastinating, I'm percolating.
Yeah.
I'm working with something, right? And that I think it connects to wonder. And I think it connects to the brain, where we don't allow ourselves sometimes to wonder, to just allow ourselves to, which is different than ruminating, right? It's like the positive side of ruminating.
A slice of research from Dr. Robert Biswas-Diener found in his clients that people were actually delivering. Lori, you and I have talked about that before, that the procrastination, you never get it done, but with rumination, you don't really get it done because you're stuck in that spiral. But in percolating, the research shows that actually you're going to deliver, and it's going to be excellent, but it's more deadline driven, and it's kind of to the deadline. So all of that percolating creativity, Caroline, you're right, spot on, and that's Biswas-Diener's research.
Awesome. So it took you guys a while. It's like from the idea of the book to what actually happened, it morphed into different things. Did it feel like it had a life of its own?
Oh, yeah. And it's funny because I asked her to illustrate it, and then she went back to college, and then she finished college, and then I went back to college. So, the timing was, it was just like anything. It's all about timing, right?
Yeah. And that there are these projects that we have in life that, that can be on the back burner, but that they need to get done. And that also relates to me from that I feel like the human spirit creates, that we're creators, that we make stuff, that's part of our nature too, is to make stuff, to have ideas and to make it. And it's not like that, oh, there's these creative people and then there's these not creative people. It's like, no, I think that process is accessible to everyone.
Right.
And in what way does that influence you as a mom, instilling those kind of ideas and creativity in your kids? Like, do you see them doing what you just did in terms of a project or in terms of creating that? Is there a process that you came up with that you encourage in your students and your kids and your whatever to do what you essentially did? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And I think it's getting outside and being bored. Like allowing, it's back to percolation, right? It's allowing things and ideas to percolate.
Well, reference boredom for a second, because we always think of boredom as negative.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by that?
No, I mean, if you're bored, go find something to do. Like my kids were not always scheduled. They did not always, so often. I mean, my kids are in their late 20s and early 30s now. So they're, of a generation, they're all millennials, but they're, early end of the millennials. And just, if they were bored, they spent a lot of time reading. They spent a lot of time making forts outside. They spent a lot of time bike riding and walking in the woods and things like that when we're so overscheduled these days, it's hard to have creativity when we're scheduled from one thing to another, to another, to another. So that's what I mean by boredom.
And I wanted to say, Caroline, that one of Lori's top strengths is curiosity. And you really hear that combination of curiosity and creativity. And curiosity is one of the VIA strengths that it's in the top 5 for happiness. So your love of learning, curiosity, when you're able to do that, you are so.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Caroline Colas, and I am the Senior Director of Health and Wellness at the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan. Today on our Lunch and Learn, a series in positive psychology with the Whole Being Institute, we are going to be talking about ways to be from A to Z with Lori Tuominen.
Tuominen.
Tuominen. So sorry.
Oh, so close. Permission to be human. Permission to be human.
Good. Permission to be human and to pronounce that incorrectly. Yeah.
You're not the first one, Caroline.
Yes. So this book that Lori has written is grounded in the science of flourishing, and it's about positive ways of being. It's based on the central tenet of positive psychology that the reader travels through each letter of the alphabet with illustrations and teachings which serve as prompts and reminders that we all have choice as to how we want to be in the world. Now, Lori is a coach and educator practicing and teaching in Western Massachusetts. And for the past year, Lori has also been the program manager for the University of Wisconsin Superior's Pruitt Center for Mindfulness and Wellbeing. Her book on positive ways of being, called Ways to Be from A to Z, is co-authored with her daughter, who illustrated the book. And today we're going to talk about that process and the process of creativity, especially now when things are so up in the air and we may have new ideas or no ideas actually about what we're going to be doing next. So I'm really excited to talk to Lori about that. She holds a master's degree of appreciative inquiry and has served as a faculty member of WBI's Certificate in Positive Psychology. Please welcome to the call, Lori. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for the invitation, Caroline. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, you're so welcome. And tell me again, just for our listeners, how you came to know about the Whole Being Institute.
Oh gosh, I was living in France for a sabbatical. My husband did a sabbatical in 2012 when I got the email that Kripalu was offering this certificate in positive psychology, and I so wanted to take it, but my mom died, and when we were coming back, and it just, the week in August, which was the first immersion, just didn't work for my life at the time. And I thought, well, if they ever teach it again, I'm going to take it and I'm going to sign up for it. And so I went through the second cohort of SIP, and I loved it. And I said, if they ever need TAs, I'm going to be a TA. So I became a TA for the third cohort of it. And then they asked me to stay on to be a senior TA for the fourth and the fifth and the first California cohort. So I stayed on through the iteration of the first certificate in positive psychology before they went to the certificate in whole person positive psychology. So it was a lot of fun learning at the feet of masters, and including Phoebe, who is our TA mentor. She's just wonderful, and Tal and Megan and Maria, just wonderful human beings. Lifelong friends I have from that program.
And I would agree. And you know, the interesting thing, I was just wanting to put in the chat for everybody, there's a link. They are, let's see, for more information. The SIP program is open, and it says click here for more information, but I'm not sure that I have the link there. You have to try that. Let me just look at that. And I'm in the program right now, and it has been one of the most exciting and interesting and evocative and informative programs that I've been in. And I think we share our love of learning, and also, like, aren't you involved in another program that you were saying that you're learning about as well? I found it to be really fascinating to do these certifications. I'm just trying to.
Yeah,
you
for
said
sure.
You're becoming a doula?
An end-of-life doula. It's a program through the University of Vermont Medical School. And so it's an 8-week program, and I've been interested in it for a while, and I reconnected with a friend from 20 years ago. And you know how sometimes you meet with somebody after you haven't met with them for a while, and you know, after 15 or 20 minutes, you're like, I'm good. It was nice seeing you, but you know, well, we didn't have that. We went for a walk, and we sat and talked on a lake, and we went out for lunch, and you know, we met at 10 in the morning. At 5:30, she said, well, I suppose we should wrap this up. And so somewhere in that conversation, I said, you know, I've been thinking about taking an end-of-life doula program. And she said, so have I. So we're actually taking it together, which has been
That's
lovely.
wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. It sort of reminds me of what our conversation is going to be about today, which is getting an idea, having an idea, and then following that through and using our character strengths as a way to do that. So can you just tell us a little bit about your book and how that happened? And I know you have a little slideshow that you could even present.
Well, I'd like to start with showing people the book. So it's Ways to Be from A to Z. What, you know, Phoebe mentioned the back of it. Actually, I think, Caroline, I think you talked about it. Ways to Be from A to Z is about positive ways of being, reminds kids and the adults in their lives that we all have the choice for how we want to be in the world. And we can choose to be joyful, kind, loving, and silly. Our choices affect not only ourselves, but the people around us too. So it's important for us to choose wisely. So, so I'm just going to show you a few of the pages, just to so you can have an idea of who the characters are.
Just gorgeous.
So this is brave and curious. This is determined and empathetic. And this is forgiving and grateful. And those of you who know the VIA strengths are seeing some of them in here, right? Forgiveness, gratitude, curiosity.
Absolutely. And the illustrations, was this your daughter's first book that she illustrated?
This was my daughter's first book, yes. Helpful and imaginative. And I'll just go to one more so we've got Wise and Xenodokio.
I have never heard of that word.
No, nobody has, but you know what xenophobic is, right? So xenophobic is fear of strangers. So if this is the opposite of xenophobic, which is being friendly to strangers, which Anouk decided to make it an actual alien so that nobody would feel like they're the other. And then just, you see another character strength, zesty, and yourself, authentic. So, and then one of my SIP TA buddies suggested that we put a glossary in it. So we put a glossary in it. I put a glossary in it, which I needed to do because it's so rich in illustration, and Anok's illustrations really, really make the book. But if I didn't put a glossary in, I'd have only written 26 words, 27 words, B, and then each of the alphabetical words. So putting a glossary in gave me a chance to share what I feel that the definitions mean to me. So, for example, under, I think the M is mindfulness. Be mindful. What I put for that is being aware of each moment as it is happening. In other words, being aware of the present moment. What's happening right now? What do you notice? So I tried to ask questions. I tried to get kids and adults thinking about what's happening right now. Xenodokial, friendly to strangers or new people. You can still be cautious, but you don't have to be afraid or unkind. This is the opposite of xenophobic, which means having a fear of strangers. How can you be friendly or welcoming to someone new? So just getting people thinking about different things. So yeah, if it's okay with you, I'll just pull up the slideshow that I have.
Yeah, let's do it.
Show you the process of what it's been like.
And again, for everybody, I really feel like, I don't know if we're in that liminal space that Maria Serwai talks about, from what we know, what we used to know, and the unknown. And lots of times we're percolating our ideas. We're thinking about different things, or we may get an idea, or one door might be shut, but there might be another option that we're considering. And so I think this is a really relevant conversation. I'm excited to have it.
So feel free if you have questions. I think Phoebe's in the chat. If you guys have questions along the way, I just put this together because I thought people might be interested in what the process was like. And of course, now I'm having trouble moving my chat box around. So anyway, it is what it is. So Phoebe, I'm counting on you to do that. I can't see the chat.
Not to worry, I can see the chat.
All right. So this was our original list, or at least an early draft. And I have to point out, yes, there are a lot of VIA character strengths on here. However, I actually thought of this book before I had even heard of what the VIA was. And you can see there's some playing around with what the words could be. And again, part of it was, like, I insisted curious had to be there. I really, really wanted the word authentic there, but there's not very many Y words. So yourself made the most sense to go with. So we used authentic in the definition of yourself. And we have, if you see under T, we had thankful, but I knew I wanted gratitude. So we did a different word for thankful. And when I found xenodokial in dictionary, I'm like, well, now I get to write an alphabet book, because there's even an X word that doesn't start with EX, but it actually starts with X. So this was what we came up with. You'll see the word loving is actually on there, and that's an important thing, because when we went through later, we didn't have the word loving on when we started the process of actually writing the book. And I wish I could find my mouse so I could see them. Anyway, okay, so
Lori, I have a question before
Sure.
you go on.
Yep.
Which is that there are many children's books that are alphabet books. So why did you want to write another one?
It's funny. I've always loved alphabet books. Always loved alphabet books. I spent a lot of time with this. I remember taking naps. My mom needing a nap, so she would. I would go to my room with a stack of books. And I would just sit and look at the pictures. This is before I could read. And alphabet books were always a favorite of mine. And I always thought, and we'll get into that in the timeline, I always thought, someone should write a book about positive ways of being. And I had thought I'd call it B, just capital B, capital E, just B. but it was confusing. Like every time I tried to tell somebody about this idea, I had to describe what I meant by be an alphabet book. My husband goes, but you're telling people to be an alphabet book. And I go, no, that's not true. And that comes into the percolation process too. We'll get into that a little bit more, but
so this actually started much earlier.
Way earlier.
So how old were you when you were thinking about writing a B alphabet book?
Oh, that started in about that idea happened in 2011. It was someone should write a book about positive ways of being. And then I kept waiting for something to come out and nothing came out. And I kept thinking, okay, well, it's not out there yet. It's not out there yet. And then I went through SIP. And, we all have to do final projects. And I thought about doing this for my final project. But I knew I wanted my daughter to illustrate it. And I knew that we, the amount of time we had for the final project wasn't going to happen. So I came up with a different final project. But I kept waiting. Because I thought it's such a good idea. Someone's going to write an alphabet book. And nobody did. So I thought, okay, well, maybe, just maybe, we can write that alphabet book, so that's kind of, so it's not that I ever thought of myself as writing an alphabet book. I've just always been attracted to alphabet books. Love them.
Gotcha.
I just think
beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. So this was the book that I imagined when I was, this is one of the little golden books. I had a stack of little golden books when I was napping. And I loved this book, and this is what I had in mind. I thought of it being like a life in the day of a little girl like this. And here's a couple of pages from it. I can squirm like a worm. So really rich in illustrations. Really, she's spunky. She's smart. She's independent. She's all of these are in her. She's imaginative. She's creative, and I just loved that idea. But Anna decided, she said, Mom, I think we should make it a multicultural book. And I said, I love it. At first, I had to let go of the idea of it not being one character's day. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. And I'm so grateful that she came up with that idea, because it's really necessary now more than ever, as we're seeing in a lot of things in life, right? So, so this is her list of the the genders, the race, the descriptions of the illustrations. And now, if you look at those words, you see lighthearted there. We had loving originally, but we decided that the word affectionate would take the place of loving, so that lighthearted could be in there. It will make sense when I get more to the timeline, but most of them, so the word we ended up with in the book is adventurous. And I'll just show you adventurous. So that's adventurous. Brave, curious, determined, empathetic, forgiving, grateful. Humble. We talked about humble for a long time, because I think humility is an underrated strength. And my daughter said, I'm not sure I can illustrate humble. So if you remember, the word we decided on was helpful. So some of it was what I insisted on being in the book, and some of it was what she felt comfortable illustrating, and some of it was whether or not she thought she could come up with a creative idea for illustrations. And it took her, she played around a little bit with the illustrations. It took her a little while, because like for Brave, originally I thought of a little girl walking across a log on a brook, kind of balancing on a balance beam type thing. But none of her illustrations are scene related. So they are like a snapshot in time. So it ended up not being in the book. A lot of this was an interesting study in letting go too.
I was just going to say that in terms of choice, and which, we're talking about, and everyone on the call is really, because we're all experiencing COVID together, really looking at what am I choosing? What am I choosing now? What am I choosing now? right? Am I going to choose to go outside? Am I going to choose to go to a museum because the museums are open? Am I going to choose to, take my kids back to school or have them home? Or there's just so much choice. And it occurred to me that even when you said your first idea was about it being one person, right? And in the creative process, we get a vision of what something's going to be like. And then we have to let go.
Yeah.
Because it does have a life of its own, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I knew that I couldn't illustrate it. So I needed my daughter, who I really wanted her to illustrate it. I really wanted to do this process with her. I knew I had to let go of some things because I wanted her to feel as much ownership for this book as I have. So yeah, it really was, a lesson in letting go, a lesson in patience, a lesson in what am I insisting that I keep, and what can we change? And a lot of the things have changed for the better. I would think 95% of what we've changed for the better. So
Beautiful.
So this is, and if you see on this, so we see it have brave, curious, forgiving, grateful, humility, modesty, humility. Those are 5 of the VIA character strengths. Kindness, let's see, and zesty. I think those are the 7. I think there's 7 VIA strengths in here. And again, in 2011, I wasn't aware of the VIA strength. So I just knew that I wanted to do this book.
Beautiful. And we had a question in the chat about how old is your daughter?
She's a mom. She's just 30. Let's see, she just turned 31. And so she probably went through these illustrations when she was in her mid 20s, mid to late 20s. And in fact, I'm going to show some of the illustrations from her early years. So this was, and I'm not sure if you guys can see this very well, but this is a dresser over on the far right side. And then there's a closet, like a clothesline type thing. And those are all dresses, and they all have different patterns on them. They're all different pattern dresses. And if I remember, she was either 4 or 5 when she illustrated this. So it's always been a love of hers. Art has always been a love of hers. And she created this Play-Doh clay scene when she was in kindergarten. And it was about a wizard. And he's got those long flowy arms, and the owl that's holding, I can't see it fully, but I think it's holding a mouse either in its claws or its beak, and the moon above him, and then that purple thing around is the wind. And the mouse down below, the owl had just dropped the mouse. That's what it was. So she had to take clay and make it different, put 2 different clays together to make different colors. And so, but you can tell what that piece of art is, and that's in kindergarten. And so she has always had this love of creating. And it's still with her to this day. And you see that in her patterns. So so here's patient and quirky. Those patterns are very similar to the patterns on that illustration that she made as a 4-year-old, 5-year-old. And it's really, the other thing I like about this book, Caroline, is each, and I'll give it away. I'm going to give it away. Each character has their own pattern. So all of the little redheaded girls, who's the same character, she's always got the big Marimekko type flowers on her top, and then polka dotted shorts. And then I don't know if she has striped socks or whatever, but they all have their own pattern. And so that's another thing that teachers have told me that they've loved sharing that with, or having their kids discover that. And you see that in each of the characters. Okay, so here's the timeline. 2011, someone should do this. In the summer, I asked my daughter if she'd illustrate it, if I ever wrote it, and And then she went back to college. And then 2013 is when I was, that's when I looked up the positive adjectives and realized there was even an X word. And I actually created a list of each alphabet word. And then I shared that with her and said, so which one do you think that you would like to, circle, this is the one I want. Generous is another G word I like. I wanted grateful. So grateful ended up in the book. That type of thing, we went back and forth, which one she could illustrate. And then I began the certificate program in the spring of 2013. And in 2014, I mentioned about the final project, but Anouk was still in college. And then SIP encouraged me to throw my backpack over the wall. And so that's when I thought, you know what? Why not me? Why not? Why am I waiting for someone else to create this idea? Why not me? And then in 2015, based on what I learned in SIP, I got really interested in David Cooper-Ryder's appreciative inquiry. So I went to Case Western Reserve University for a master's in positive organization development and change with a certificate in appreciative inquiry. So, but I wouldn't have done that because I kind of never thought I wanted to get a higher ed degree. Like, no, thanks, not interested. I love to learn, but I just didn't think that I wanted that. So anyway, she created she started the illustrations in 2016. So she would have been 27. And she started with Lighthearted, the one, right?
Can you unpack for us the throw my backpack over the wall reference?
Sure. So for those of you who took SIP, you know exactly what I'm talking about. For those of you who have not been in the Certificate in Positive Psychology program, it's a concept that Tal, Megan, and Maria talked about often. When you throw your backpack over the wall, you then have to figure out a way to get to your backpack, especially if your cell phone and keys are in your backpack. So then you've committed to doing some sort of project. And in the thinking of the someone should part of this, I hadn't thrown my backpack over the wall because I wasn't thinking of it as being me. I was just thinking that it's a good idea and someone should run with it. But the throwing the backpack over the wall, SIP encouraged that in me. And so, I kind of did it when I asked my daughter if she would illustrate it for me, but still not fully. It's like it was an iterative process. I did a little bit, and then I did a little bit, and then I did a little bit. And then we started to go from there. So 2016 is when she started to create the illustrations, and that you'll see there's a good reason for that. Because in March, her son was born. And he was born on the last day of my residency at Case. In May, I graduated. In the summer and into 2018, I actually spent time contacting agents and publishers about my idea for the book B. And it wasn't a process that I enjoyed at all. I dragged my feet. I was getting rejections. I was getting good feedback, but rejections, suggestions for places to contact. It felt like it was a soul-sucking process for me. It was not enjoyable at all. And in looking back, I didn't contact nearly as many as I should have. But at some point I felt like, you know what, I'm just going to self-publish because why not? But in that process, we changed the title from B: an alphabet book to Ways to Be from A to Z, which I think that tells you at a glance what the book is about. There's no question that it's an alphabet book. I asked this to second graders, what do you think the book is about? And they said, I think it's a rhyming book. And I said, oh, I love it. I wish it was, but it's not. I said, why do you think that? And he said, because B rhymes with Z. And I said that, so we have discussions like that when I talk with kids about this. So in 2018, I went to a silent retreat. I teach mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, and one of the things we're required to do is to go to silent retreats. And I went to a silent retreat at the IMS, the Insight Meditation Society in Barre, Massachusetts. And during that, it's a silent retreat for the participants, but then we're guided by teachers. And in that retreat, 18 of the 26 words that were in our book were used by those teachers in that retreat. If we use the word loving, and I called my daughter and I said, you know what? I made a mistake. I think we need the word loving in there, because love, oh, that's another be a character strength, right? Love is what it's all about. It all comes down to love. Love can't not be in the book. Affectionate gets to some of love, but not all of love. And so that spring, she reworked affectionate to loving and lighthearted to adventurous. So she had, and you saw the list she had of the genders and the races and the different things. She wanted them spread out throughout the book. And so we had to, she said, oh, but I love the illustration lighthearted. And I said, why don't we make it the cover? So that's what we did. We made lighthearted the cover. It became the cover of the book. And then that summer, we decided to self-publish. We were assured it would be ready by Christmas. It could be distributed by Christmas. The publication date is actually December 26th, 2018. So even that, it's like letting go. Okay, we're close. We didn't quite get there, but we're still getting it out in the world. So in 2019, in January, I was production stage manager for a community theater production of Peter Pan, and on our opening night was when I got the first print. That we got to hold it in my hands, so that was pretty cool. And then it became available to the public in April of 2019.
Wow, talk about a long birthing process.
Yeah, 8 years.
We're going to talk 8 years. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in relationship to way power and percolation versus procrastination and hope theory. So let's finish up here, and then we'll talk about that a little bit more.
Sure. So just some early sketches. So that, as the title B, she's got little illustrations of the characters all playing around on the B letters, and another version of it. And you'll see, so her earlier illustrations, or all her illustrations, she hand lettered everything. So be joyful. See how it's got the capital B and the capital E, because that was my idea for the title of the book. She changed joyful, I'll show you him, because she felt bad that he was the only one with his back to the audience. So she changed him to be forward facing. And then the be yourself, we originally were going to have it be a mirror, so that every child, every person looking at the book would see themselves in the mirror. But then when I realized that we're going to self-publish, and I thought, well, I'm going to be the person inserting all these mirrors. Hannah, can you rework that? Can you rework that? So she did. And I showed you that one. It's him. You see his reflection in the mirror. So it gives the same idea, but it's not each person seeing themselves. And then this is from her original script to finding a script that worked. I believe the font is called Sun Valley. And I chose it because it looks like script, but each letter can be read on its own. So even the S's and the V's and any of the thing that the letter is different in cursive shows up as if it was in print. And then just, just to give you an idea. And then this was the first illustration of Lighthearted, which was her favorite. And then she reworked it to be the cover. And then this is her son, the one who was born my last day of grad school. So that was the day she got her books, the same day I got mine. So he was looking, and the little redheaded girl, my oldest granddaughter, is redheaded, and he calls that one by her name. So because and the dinosaur that's on the card, his mom's illustration of it was based on one of my granddaughter's illustrations of dinosaurs. So that's it in a nutshell. So
wow, so inspiring. Lori, so inspiring. Now can you show us the cover of the book again, because
Sure.
it was a little hard to see.
Yep.
Yeah. And you were saying each character has a different pattern.
Yes. So every time you see this little girl, she always has the U-shaped dresses and the striped socks.
That's great.
So she's one of my favorite illustrations in the whole entire book is observant.
Oh, gotcha.
So
Great.
see, same U-shaped dresses and same striped pants and socks.
That's great.
Whatever. Nurturing.
Mm-hmm.
Love that.
Beautiful.
It's a, you know, this is loving ended up in there.
So gorgeous. And where can we get this book?
So I can, if people want to contact me, I can send you a copy, or it's on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble. It's on pretty much anywhere books, you know, ask for it at your local bookstores. I'm still working on figuring that out, Caroline, honestly, because, you know, we got it out. I was working last summer on getting this out, and then I took this full-time job in Superior, Wisconsin, and the book has taken a back seat. So, but I've been really loving going out to schools and sharing with students about the ideas. It's a great discussion book. I've had teachers say they can pick words of the day. They you know, how do you show up when you're grateful? Just other things like that.
It's so wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I'm just, you know, you have 4 kids, you have 4 grandkids. In relationship to meaning, right? And this project, it sounds like it was a meaningful project, but a side project in a way. And I think we all have these little projects in our lives, these ideas. I was saying to you earlier that I feel like the human spirit is we're designed to make stuff. We're designed to be creative. We're designed to, just as a human, it's part of our DNA. And sometimes what's interesting is that we don't even realize we're doing it, because like our character strengths, our top character strengths, they're kind of automatic for us. So can you talk about what incubation means? And it seems like we're incubating ideas all the time. How do we identify that? Because in some ways, COVID has made us, quite a few of us, if not all of us, throw our backpack over the wall, whether we like it or not.
Right.
Right?
That's a good question. Incubation. You know, we talked a little bit before about allowing my kids to get bored. You know, it's like we are so often overscheduled that and we talk about this in mindfulness too, in meditation, that a lot of times the creative process happens when we give ourselves space, when we give ourselves time, when we give ourselves silence to be able to allow the creative juices to flow. And I think, I don't know how you guys feel, but you would think that I'd have a lot more time for that during COVID. But I feel more busy now than ever. And it's so important now because of that. So for me, I get outside every morning. I live on the tip of Lake Superior when I'm in Wisconsin, and I go out and I watch the sunrise while I'm walking, spend time out there. At home in Western Massachusetts, I'm tromping through the woods. We can't, so my husband calls it creativity on demand. It's not possible to be creative on demand. And that's why he jokes about it, you know, grant writing, any kind of deadlines that you have, it's hard to make that happen. But when you give it, and that's why, you know, you talked about procrastination earlier, Caroline, about is it procrastination or is it percolation? Because the procrastination, you have the idea and then you just let it simmer for a while, and then come back to it, and then simmer for a while, and then come back to it. We would have had a different titled book if we had published it when we originally were trying to publish it. And I don't think it would have been as strong of a title of a book. We would have had different illustrations. We wouldn't have had loving in the book. I don't think it would have been as strong of a book to not have loving in the book. I think we need time and space to allow the creative process to happen.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier too, about the difference between wondering and ruminating, right? Wondering is, again, like, I wonder why that is. And now we have Google, we look it up right away. But when we allow ourselves to wonder, the brain has to kind of expand. It reminds me of, wonder to me is the way to access awe. I don't know if that's true, but it is a way for me to, I wonder what kind of bird that is when I'm walking. And then if I let myself just think about it for a while, and suddenly I'm over at the library, and if I don't reach for Google right away, if I allow myself that space and time to wonder about it, to expand, it's a different relationship. And it seems to me that accesses creativity, whereas rumination, it just feels like it's a circle that goes around and around.
Shuts it off. Yeah. Savoring is the same. How often do we reach a goal and then we immediately change the goalpost, right? You have a project at work, and, well, I got that done, now I can move on to the next thing. But savoring that awe, that wonder, that's an important part of the process. And Phoebe, you were phenomenal at this with SIP. You always made sure that we knew how to savor and really help others see the value in what they bring to the process, because I think we as humans, we're not very good at that. We're not very good at that, and part of it is that negativity bias that Rick Hansen talks about, that, the negative sticks to us like Velcro and the positive rolls off us like Teflon. But awe and savoring helps us see and experience those things that, yeah, you finished a project. Take some time to acknowledge that. Take some time that this is an important part of the creativity process.
And talk a little bit more about savoring, because I think that right now, as we think about going back to school, getting the kids back in school, or, as I said, going out to museums. If you're in New York City, the museums are open, and I know that Deb Levine is on the call. She's out there, and I just talked to another one of my NIA students who said, yeah, I'm going to all the museums. And then there's some of us that are reticent to go out, and even just savoring that I did something like that was a little scary for me, like go to the store or go out, or some of us aren't going out at all or can't. I want to acknowledge that. Each person is different. But walk us through how to savor and how you savored this amazing, beautiful book. And are you continuing to savor it?
Oh, I'm not very good at savoring for something. I mean, some things I am. I will say, next to raising my kids and spending time with my kids and our grandkids, I'm most proud of this book, of all of the stuff, whatever I've done in my life. And so that's part of savoring. It's like, okay, at the end of the day, what do I want people to know that I did in my life? I want people to feel like they've been seen, valued, heard, like they matter to me. Love is a big part of who I am. And so for me to acknowledge that this book is something I'm most proud of, is big for me. So I would say that that's a way that I've savored it. I don't know that I would have felt the same had I not done the project with my daughter. That was part of the process for me, was to be able to do this project with her. When I was looking for agents and publishers, we'd already done the book. Everything was done. The illustrations were done. And the glossary was done. Everything was done. And it became very clear to me that they didn't want an author and an illustrator as partners. They wanted an author illustrator who is the same person, or they wanted the author that they could then take and find match up with an illustrator. And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do that at all. So in some ways, I actually felt like self-publishing was a little bit of a throwing in the towel, kind of. But on the other hand, we kept the control of how we created this book to be what we wanted it to be. And I think that there's a lot of, we've gotten a lot of positive feedback about it. If I could just get the word out more to people, it would be great. So I don't know if I answered your question, but.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems to me like this is also about teamwork and collaboration, you know, like what did Chris Peterson say, who's part of the Via Strengths original with Marty Seligman, said, you know, other people matter, right? So why this is so meaningful. And we had Michael Steger on the call talking about meaning. And I think this is amazing that you said that this is one of the most, what you want to be known for. Like, this is one of the most important things that you have done. And it strikes me as humility and love must be in your top strengths. And also I wanted you to talk about appreciative inquiry and your work and your attraction to that. Was this something that, okay, you learned about and then you decided to pursue? Is it in some ways similar? Because as we look at goal setting, right, and having a goal and also pursuing a pathway, and then, you know, sort of agency, our GPA model, it seems like there's some similarities in this. It's like, wait a minute, this tickled my fancy, or this, and I didn't think I would get a degree, and suddenly you were there. So how was that similar to writing the book?
So when it came time to, those of you who've done SIP, you know what I'm talking about when I talk about final project. Those of you who haven't, when I went through it, it was an 11-month program, and somewhere in about month 6, we started to find out we needed to do a final project. And I mentioned that I thought about doing the book for the final project, but I just knew that it wasn't realistic. The final project doesn't have to be in a final form. I could have done a first draft of the book, but I knew Anna wouldn't have been able to do that. So, I went back. I was all over the map, which is really funny because I have a lot of interests. I love to learn. I'm curious. And the fact that I was all over the map, like I could have done this, I could have done this, I could have done, you know, whatever. And I finally decided that what we focus on grows, you know, when we appreciate the good appreciates. And so I decided to do my final project on that, which is hilarious if you think about it, because I couldn't focus on anything in some ways. And in other ways, the focus expanded, and it was basically a visual, at a glance, these are the things that are important to me. At a glance, and I started to think about, you know, if you need reminders, stop signs can be a good reminder to just breathe. Railroad crossings, it's also a reminder to have rest and relaxation, right? Recreation, rejuvenation. I started to look at signs that were, you know, like I went to Costco and there was a box of a Canon camera, and the box said, "What's inside?" And I took a picture of it. And I know it's a marketing gimmick. I get that. But when I started to look at everything through the lens of positive psychology, everything changed for me. I started to see Hope gas stations. I started to see, you know, let it snow. I happen to love snow. I know not everybody does, but let it snow signs. And I'm like, yeah, then I can ski more, you know, that type of thing. And I started, so it became a visual of the things that are important to me. And I was appreciating them, and they grew, you know, it became what we focus on. And then I started to think, well, so what is it that I'm most attracted to in positive psychology? I looked at the MAP program. it was a little more research heavy than I was interested in. As a practitioner, I really wanted to focus on a program that might have been more practitioner focused. And so this appreciative inquiry, this looking at what's working instead of what the problems are. I can be a really good problem finder and solver. And you know, quality control people, that's their job, to find what's wrong with things. And we need people like that. But it didn't give me energy. It didn't allow me the space to, we teach what we need to learn, right?
Yeah.
So
and I also think what you were saying is really important, and I want to highlight it. It didn't give me energy, right? Just right there, like we could stop right there. And when we think about the basic brain and sort of, you know, what we move towards and what we move away, it's like I didn't move towards it. So for everyone, one of the things that we can use towards like finding out what we want to do is like, what are we moving towards? What are we moving away from? Physically, right? So it just didn't give you energy.
It didn't. I had been at a job that wasn't meaningful to me. And I had worked with a coach and talked about values. And I realized that the values that were most important to me were not being seen or recognized in any of the work that I was doing. Well, no wonder I hated my job. You know, it's like, isn't that interesting? I was pretty good at my job. It was okay. It was a fine job, but it didn't light me up. What I'm doing now lights me up. You know, it feels different. It just feels different. So beautiful. I don't know if I'm answering your questions, Caroline.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. I think we're talking about a subject, everyone. When we talk about creativity, when we talk about percolation, when we talk about awe, when we talk about values, when we talk about living authentically, it's not a straight line.
No.
It's not a straight line. It's not creativity on demand. And I think that a lot of us are in that situation now where we're reimagining what our present is, and what certainly we know that the future is not going to look like the past. That's a guarantee, right? I don't think for anyone around the world. You know, there's even those that still have their jobs. Like I have a friend that still has their job, but she's working from home now. She's not going back into the office until 2021, maybe at the end of the year, right? So that's a very different reality, even though her job is, let's say, the same. So when we look at that, how do we broaden and how do we build? And how do you, as you reflect back, have you used the positive psychology foundation to create meaning and change in your life and choice?
Yeah. That's a really good question. So before we went remote in March, I was teaching a mindfulness-based stress reduction class. I was actually teaching two, and I was able to finish one in person. And the other one was a couple of weeks behind, so I had to finish that one online remotely. And I was so sad because I loved being in person with those students and learning from them and just having that sense of community. And it showed me that I can teach MBSR online. I can do that online. I don't have to, I mean, I like it better in person, but when I taught it online this summer, and I shared this with my students at the end, I said, I was really trepidatious to teach this online because it's such it's not a therapy situation, but it kind of feels like it at times because people are so open in their sharing. And it's one of the things I love about it because everybody learns from each other's experiences. They experience their own experiences and then they learn what other people's experiences were. And it's just such a beautiful model for that. And had I not gone and had to teach two classes online, I don't know that I would have taught it online. I don't know that I would have felt confident enough to, competent enough to be able to teach it in an online version. And it was, the very first class, there were students that were saying, wow, I can't believe how close I feel to everybody already. And this was a Zoom situation. It was really fascinating in how the heart work can work virtually as well. And you're finding that, I'm sure, with your lunch and learns that you've been doing, you know, that you do sense the energy that's happening even thousands of miles away, you know.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and the one of the benefits that came from teaching online was I wasn't then bound to only teaching it to people who were here in the Twin Ports. We had students in Florida, we had students in Texas, we had students down in Madison, Wisconsin, we had students in Massachusetts. And that wouldn't have happened if we had been teaching it in person. So it's finding the, you know, it's the benefit finding, it's the gratitude. What are, instead of focusing on what we don't like in the situation, how can we find those things that have grown? Like, people have spent more time with their families probably than ever before. And I get it. I know, those of you who still have kids at home, my heart goes out to you, because I don't know how you've done working remotely and having your kids at home, especially those of you with young kids. Well, teenagers too. I have good friends who have teenagers, and I, you know, because teens, their social world is their friends. And you know, what has come out of this that has been beneficial? Family times have changed. You have more time with family. I know people that are spending time doing game nights via Zoom with their extended family. I had, you know, it's finding whatever that silver lining is to you. And it's not easy.
Talk about that benefit finding. It's not it's like, oh yeah, at the beginning I found the benefit, and now like I'm ready to get on with it. That's part of appreciative inquiry too. It's like, wait a second, what is working? What is working?
What is working? Exactly.
All the time. It's not just once. Because
No.
I think we're talking about way power here. We're now in September. We've passed the 6-month mark. It looks like if everything goes well and we don't get a huge second wave, maybe things will start to open up more and more and more, but we just don't know. So for those of us that are out there, what do we do when and maybe it comes back to time and space again, having that space for creativity. What do we do when we're feeling tired, when we're feeling exhausted, when we're feeling a little bit run down, when we're still hoping that this will go a bit away and we'll get back to normal?
Yeah.
But when we're realizing that, wait a minute, maybe this is the new normal.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's a really hard one to answer because it's going to be different for every person. You got to find that what works for you, what your fit is. We actually just had a conversation with our provost this morning, and we were talking about, you know, everybody's feeling exhausted, and it's September 15th or 17th. We don't usually feel this way until the end of the semester. We're in week 3, you know. We talk about the summer being the time to rest, rejuvenate, recreate, and relax. And that didn't happen because everybody was busy trying to come up with ways of teaching online. And I completely lost my train. There is a point here.
Well, we were talking about exhaustion and what to do to
so my colleague, thank you. My colleague said he likes to use the analogy of the gas tank. If you're driving and your tank is on E and you don't take the time to fill up your gas tank, then there's going to be problems. You're either going to run out of gas on the side of the highway and have to, you know, or you're going to wreck your car or whatever. But even if you can't, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. It doesn't have to be, I have to be able to fill up my gas tank to the top or I stay on E. If you put $5 or $10 into the gas tank, it can get you to where you need to go. And it might be looking at it that way instead of making it an all or nothing. It doesn't have to be an either or. It can be a both and. And the idea of filling your gas tank is such a good one because we're all exhausted right now. Even those of us who practice these positive, you know, psychology tenets, it's hard. I know it's hard. It's hard to be in the middle of this pandemic that we don't know when the end, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of unknowing. And how do we deal with that? Find some little thing that can increase your capacity to grow and learn by 3%, 4%. it doesn't have to be 100%. It can be just something little that brings you joy. Maybe it's having that first cup of coffee in the morning, or a cup of tea, or maybe it's going for a walk. Maybe it's spending time with somebody, even if it's virtually, and setting aside time that doesn't get put on the back burner. Maybe it's reading. Maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's listening to music. Maybe it's playing music. Maybe, find whatever it is for you that brings you that joy, that energy.
Yeah, I was listening to a talk by Tal Ben-Shahar and Rick Hansen and his son, Forrest. It sort of reminds me of I think somebody commented on in the chat. And it reminds me of your collaboration. It was wonderful to see their collaboration. And Tal was talking about the sun, how we can't seek happiness or positivity. We know that looking directly at the sun is not healthy for us. But we also know that we are warmed by the sun, and so we can look at it indirectly. And the same thing, which is what I hear you saying, is like we can do those micro moments of positivity, those things that make us feel better, and we'll actually be happier versus pursuing happiness and insisting that we're happy, or insisting that we're savoring, or insisting that. So for example, small things do make a difference. I knit, and I just do one row. I have my knitting out and I just walk by and I do a row. There's only 8 stitches, guys. So it's a very small thing, but it gives me pleasure in that moment. And some days I can do 2 or 3 rows. Some days I don't, but I pass it and I see it, and I like, again, I move towards that, and it makes me feel. And then what's amazing is then now I have this long string that eventually will be, I don't know, hopefully a scarf or a tail to a wild costume, who knows. But I wanted to thank you for reminding us about taking time to percolate, taking time to let these dreams that we have simmer, and giving ourselves the space and the openness that we need to broaden and build, to savor, to maybe put some gas in our gas tank. Yeah. And I would love a copy of your book. I mean, I just think that I can't wait to go to Amazon or get it from you, because it looks really beautiful. And I can think of a lot of young ones in my life that I would love for them to just feel and see the illustrations and touch the book. So thank you. Thank you for creating that.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure. It was a joy.
Yeah, and I just want to remind everyone that next week we are going to be having our Lunch and Learn series, and I put a couple of links in the chat. So if you are interested in the certificate in positive psychology, they are signing up people. Please click on that link and you can learn more about it. I put it in there a couple of times because I'm learning how to do that. And on Tuesday, Elizabeth Whitney is a psychologist, and she's going to be talking about resilience. And Rick Prater is going to come back, and he's going to be talking about designing our lives during COVID right now in this period, and how important routine is, and help us out a little bit with that, because I think it's always great to get a good reminder about that. Thank you everyone for being on the call. Be well. And again, Lori, thank you for the reminder of how to be creative.
Thank you.
And the importance of that and filling our tank. Take care, everybody. Be safe. Be well.
Bye, everyone.